The champagne flutes gleamed under the reception hall's crystal chandeliers, each bubble rising like a tiny prayer for happiness. I stood there in my ivory gown, the weight of the silk train pooling at my feet, watching my new mother-in-law approach with 2 glasses balanced expertly in her manicured hands. Patricia Whitmore had worn black to my wedding. Not navy, not charcoal, black. The kind of black you wear to funerals. "Darling Sophia," she said, her voice dripping with honey that couldn't quite mask the vinegar underneath. "A toast, just the 2 of us, before the speeches begin." I should have known then. I should have seen it in the way her smile didn't reach her eyes, those ice-blue eyes that had looked at me with barely concealed contempt since the moment her son Marcus brought me home 18 months ago. But I was drunk on happiness, on the impossible reality that I had just married the love of my life, and I wanted so desperately to believe that this moment might be our turning point. According to YouTube analytics, 99.6% of viewers are not subscribed. That's a huge number. By subscribing the channel that is completely free, you'll help support the channel and never miss fresh content. "Thank you, Patricia," I said, reaching for the glass in her right hand. "No, dear. This one's yours." She thrust the left glass toward me with a firmness that left no room for argument. "I had them add a touch of elderflower to yours. Something special." The lie was smooth, practiced, but I caught it, just the briefest flicker of her eyes toward the glass, a tension in her jaw, the way her thumb pressed against the stem like she was restraining herself from something. In that microsecond, every passive-aggressive comment, every undermining remark, every attempt to convince Marcus I wasn't good enough crystallized into a single, sickening certainty. She had done something to my drink. My mind raced even as I kept my smile fixed in place. The reception hall blurred around me, 200 guests chatting, laughing, celebrating, and all I could hear was the thundering of my own heartbeat. Patricia stood before me, waiting, watching with predatory patience. "How thoughtful," I said, taking the glass. Our eyes met, and in hers I saw triumph already blooming. She thought she'd won. She thought I was just another obstacle to remove from her son's life, like she'd removed Sarah, his high school sweetheart, and Olivia, his college girlfriend, and God knows how many others who had gotten too close. Marcus had told me the stories late at night, his voice heavy with old pain. How Sarah suddenly left town after Patricia had a conversation with her family. How Olivia developed mysterious panic attacks before every family dinner until she finally broke off the engagement. His mother had an arsenal of weapons, money, connections, manipulation, and apparently, as I was now discovering, less subtle methods when her preferred tactics failed. "To new beginnings," Patricia said, raising her glass. The smile on her face was the smile of a woman who thought she was removing a tumor from her son's life. In her twisted logic, she was saving him. From me, from happiness, from any future that didn't center entirely around her. The guests were starting to turn our way. In moments, everyone would be watching our toast, this symbolic gesture of family unity. I looked at my glass, at the tiny bubbles rising through what I could only assume was contaminated champagne. What had she put in there? Ipecac to make me violently ill? Something stronger? My imagination conjured horrors. Me collapsing at my own wedding, ambulances, hospitals. Marcus's face twisted in anguish, while Patricia played the concerned mother, consoling her son over his wife's mysterious illness. The thought ignited something primal in me. Not just anger, rage. White-hot, clarifying rage that burned away the fear and the desire to keep the peace. This woman had tried to destroy every chance Marcus had at love, and now she was trying to destroy our marriage on the very day it began. In that moment, I made my choice. "Wait," I said, touching her arm gently. I'm so sorry, Patricia. I'm left-handed. You know how awkward it is. Would you mind terribly if we switched? I'd hate to bump your arm during the toast. The lie came easily, smoothly, born from the same place her lie had come from, the desperate need to survive. Something flickered across her face. Confusion, a hint of alarm. But she was trapped by the same social conventions she'd used to corner me. We were surrounded by witnesses now, people turning to watch the touching moment between bride and mother-in-law. To refuse such a simple request would look churlish, suspicious. "Of course, dear," she said, and I watched her internal calculation play across her features. She was reassuring herself that I couldn't possibly know, that I was just being awkward, that in 30 seconds I would drink whatever poison she'd prepared, and she would have won. We switched glasses with a delicate clink of crystal. I raised mine, her original glass, clean and safe, and watched as she raised mine, the one she'd tainted with such confidence. "To family," I said, looking directly into her eyes. "To getting exactly what we deserve." She blinked. Something in my tone must have registered because uncertainty crept into her expression. But we were both committed now, both caught in the performance. Around us, guests raised their own glasses, a chorus of "to family" echoing through the hall. I brought my glass to my lips and took a small sip. Clean, crisp, perfect. Across from me, Patricia hesitated for just a moment. But pride, that vicious pride, made her drink. Social expectations made her drink. The need to maintain her facade of gracious mother-in-law made her drink. She took 3 large swallows before lowering her glass, and I watched the moment realization began to dawn. Her eyes widened almost imperceptibly. The color started to drain from her perfectly made-up face. "Excuse me," I said sweetly. "I should go freshen up before the speeches. Thank you for that lovely toast, Patricia. So thoughtful of you." Walked away, my train sweeping behind me like a cape, and I didn't look back. My hands were shaking so hard, I had to press them against my sides to hide the tremors. I had just made an enemy of my mother-in-law in the most dramatic way possible. But what choice did I have? Let her poison me? Let her win? I made it to the bridal suite and collapsed against the door, champagne glass still gripped in my white-knuckled hand. My best friend Rachel found me there 5 minutes later, tears streaming down my face, the full weight of what had just happened crashing over me. "Soph? Oh my God, what's wrong? Did something happen?" The words tumbled out. Patricia, the champagne, the switch, everything. Rachel's face transformed from concern to absolute fury. "That psychotic?" She caught herself, grabbed my shoulders. Okay, we need to be smart about this. Do you still have your glass?" "This one." I held it up. "The one she was supposed to drink." "We're keeping that. Evidence. And we need to figure out what the hell she put in yours." Rachel's mind was already working. She was a lawyer, sharp and strategic, and I'd never been more grateful for her presence. "But first, you need to get through this reception. Can you do that?" Could I? I looked at myself in the mirror, my carefully styled hair, the dress I'd spent months choosing, the happiness that should have been written all over my face, but was now mixed with something harder, something forged in the crucible of betrayal. "Yes," I said, "I can do that." We returned to the reception hall, and I played my part perfectly. I laughed, danced, cut the cake, posed for photos. But I was watching Patricia the whole time, tracking her across the room like a predator. She'd retreated to a corner table, looking pale and unsteady. She kept going to the bathroom. Whatever she'd put in that champagne was clearly taking effect, and I felt a savage satisfaction watching her suffer. Marcus noticed his mother's condition during dinner. "Mom looks awful," he whispered to me. "I should check on her." Maybe something she ate disagreed with her, I said, the double meaning clear in my mind, if not in his. He squeezed my hand, completely oblivious to the war that had been waged in his name. Patricia made it through the father-daughter dance, my dad whirling me around the floor while tears streamed down both our faces. But by the time the speeches started, she'd excused herself entirely. I watched her leave, hunched and pale, her husband Gerald supporting her weight. She shot me one venomous look over her shoulder, and in that look, I saw it all. The acknowledgement that I knew, the fury that her plan had backfired, and the promise that this was far from over. The speeches were beautiful. My father spoke about letting his little girl go. Marcus's father talked about gaining a daughter. My maid of honor made everyone cry-laugh with stories from our college days. And through it all, I felt the glass wrapped in napkins and horizontal. Rachel's purse, evidence of something dark that had tried to destroy this perfect day. It wasn't until later that night, in our hotel suite, that I told Marcus everything. He didn't believe me at first. He couldn't. Sophia, I know my mother can be difficult, but poisoning you? At our wedding? That's insane. I know how it sounds. I was still in my wedding dress, too exhausted to change, sitting on the edge of the enormous bed. But Marcus, I saw her. I saw the way she looked at that glass, the way she insisted I take that specific one. And when we switched, when she drank from it, she got sick within minutes. She probably just had food poisoning or... Marcus. I stopped him, took his hands. I need you to hear me, really hear me. Your mother has spent years sabotaging your relationships. You've told me the stories yourself, Sarah, Olivia, the others, and now me. She wasn't going to let this marriage happen without trying one more time. I watched him war with himself, watched cognitive dissonance play across his features. This was his mother, the woman who raised him. But it was also the woman who'd made his childhood a battleground of control and manipulation, who'd driven his father into quiet submission, who'd never let him make a single major life decision without her approval. "We saved the glass," I said quietly. "The one she tried to give me. Rachel has it. We can have it tested." The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus stood, paced to the window overlooking the city lights. His shoulders were rigid, his reflection in the glass showing a man being torn in two. "If you're right," he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. "If you're right about this, I don't know what that means. For us, for my family." "It means you have to choose," I said. "And I know that's not fair. I know it's your wedding night and you should be happy, and this is the last conversation we should be having. But she forced this choice, Marcus, not me." He turned to face me, and I saw my husband of 6 hours, with tears running down his face. "I believe you," he said. "God help me, I believe you. Because deep down, I've always known she was capable of something like this. I just didn't want to see it." We held each other that night, not in celebration but in mourning. Mourning the family we'd hoped we could have, the relationships that were now irreparably broken, the innocence we'd lost. We didn't consummate our marriage. We just held each other while the world we'd built together shifted on its foundations. The next morning, we had the champagne tested at a private lab Rachel recommended. The results came back 48 hours later, cutting short our honeymoon in Tuscany. High doses of ipecac and a mild sedative. Enough to make someone violently, retchingly ill for hours. Enough to ruin a wedding night and possibly send someone to the hospital. Not enough to kill, but enough to destroy. The question became, what do we do now? Marcus wanted to confront his mother immediately. I suggested something more strategic. We had evidence. We had witnesses who saw her hand me the glass, saw us toast. We had power now, and we needed to decide how to use it. We could press charges. Rachel said over coffee in our tiny apartment 3 days after we returned. She'd brought her paralegal with her, a woman named Jean with sharp eyes and a sharper mind. This is assault, potentially attempted poisoning. The DA would probably take the case. And destroy Marcus's family in the process, I said. Make this a public scandal. She tried to destroy you first, Rachel shot back. At your own wedding. Marcus sat silent, his coffee untouched, looking like he'd aged 10 years in a week. What do you want to do, Sophia? This is your decision. She hurt you or tried to. You get to decide how we respond. What did I want? Revenge, certainly. Justice, absolutely. But also, I wanted my husband back. I wanted the light in his eyes that had been there when he proposed, when he'd said his vows. I wanted to start our marriage without this shadow hanging over us. I want her to know that we know, I said slowly, working it out as I spoke. I want her to know she didn't win, that she'll never win. I want consequences, but I don't want to destroy Marcus's family unless we absolutely have to. We crafted a plan. A week after the wedding, we invited Marcus's parents to dinner at our apartment. Patricia arrived looking recovered but wary, her eyes darting between us like she was calculating escape routes. Gerald seemed oblivious, jolly, and full of stories about their recent trip to Martha's Vineyard. We made it through appetizers and small talk. Then, as I served the main course, roasted chicken with herbs from my mother's garden, I placed a manila folder next to Patricia's plate. "What's this?" she asked, her voice tight. "Open it," Marcus said. His voice was granite. She did. Inside were the lab results, printed statements from 3 guests who saw her hand me the champagne and insist I take a specific glass, and a notarized affidavit from Rachel detailing everything I'd told her that night. The color drained from Patricia's face for the second time in 2 weeks. Gerald grabbed the folder, read through it, and I watched him transform from jovial to horrified in real time. "Patricia," he breathed, "tell me this isn't true. Tell me you didn't—" "It was just meant to make her a little sick," Patricia said, the words escaping before she could stop them. It was a confession, raw and ugly. Just enough that Marcus would see what a mistake he was making. Just enough that he'd realize— That I'd realize what? Marcus's voice could have cut glass. That my mother is a controlling, manipulative monster who can't stand the thought of me loving anyone but her? I raised you. Patricia's composure shattered completely. I sacrificed everything for you, and you throw it all away on her? She jabbed a finger at me. A nobody from nowhere with no family connections, no breeding. Stop. Marcus stood, and I'd never seen him like this. Cold, commanding, final. You will never speak about my wife like that again. You will never contact her again. You will never come to our home again. Marcus! Gerald tried to intervene, his face stricken. Dad, did you know about this? No, God, no. Marcus, I swear. Then here are the terms, I said, taking over before this exploded further. We're not pressing charges. We're not making this public. But Patricia, you are out of our lives. Completely. No calls, no texts, no showing up at holidays or birthdays. You're done. You can't cut me off from my son. Patricia was standing now, vibrating with rage. I won't allow it. You lost the right to have a say in my life the moment you tried to poison my wife, Marcus said. Each word was deliberate, final. If you break these terms, if you contact Sophia, if you try anything like this again, we release everything. We go public. We press charges. We make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of person you are. Dad, Marcus continued, softer now. You're welcome in our lives. You've never been anything but kind to Sophia. But if you can't manage her, if she keeps trying to interfere, Then we'll have to cut contact with you too. I'm sorry. I hate that it has to be this way. But I won't let her destroy my marriage. Gerald looked at his wife like he was seeing her for the first time. How could you? He whispered. Patricia, how could you do something like this? We left them there in our apartment with the evidence, the choices, and the ruins of their family dynamic. Marcus and I went for a walk along the river, holding hands in the cooling evening air. Thank you, he said after a long silence. For what? For being strong enough to stop her, for saving both of us. The weeks that followed were difficult. Patricia tried to call 47 times before Gerald apparently confiscated her phone. She sent letters that we returned unopened. She even tried to show up at Marcus's office, but security turned her away after we'd preemptively warned them. Gerald came alone for dinner once a month. He'd aged, the stress of managing Patricia's fury and his own guilt etched into his features. But he came, and he was kind, and he treated me like the daughter he'd genuinely gained, rather than the obstacle Patricia saw. She's in therapy, he told us 6 months after the wedding. It's hard. She's being diagnosed with various things, control disorders, narcissistic tendencies. The doctors say she's been this way for years, that it's been escalating. She's convinced she was protecting you, Marcus. In her mind, she's the victim in all this. How do you feel about all of it? I asked gently. Gerald looked down at his hands, weathered and strong, the hands of a man who'd spent 40 years smoothing over his wife's damage. Relieved, he admitted, and guilty for feeling relieved, but mostly just sad. Sad that it took something this extreme for me to see how bad it had gotten. I failed you, son. I should have stopped her years ago. Dad! Marcus reached across the table, gripped his father's hand. You're here now. That's what matters. A year after the wedding, Marcus and I renewed our vows in a small ceremony with just close friends and Gerald. This time there was no shadow hanging over us, no poison in the champagne. Just love and hope and the family we were building together, stronger for having survived the attempt to tear it apart. I still have the dress from that first wedding, preserved in a box in our closet. Sometimes I look at it and remember the girl who wore it, so naive and hopeful, who thought love would be enough to bridge every gap. She learned the hard way that some gaps can't be bridged, that some people will never change, that choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's survival. Patricia never apologized. According to Gerald, she maintains to this day that she was trying to help, that we overreacted, that we'll eventually see she was right. She's invited to Christmas at Gerald's house, and we're invited too, but we've never attended the same event. We probably never will. Do I regret switching those glasses? Not for a second. Do I regret how everything unfolded? Only that it had to unfold at all, that there wasn't some magical solution where everyone emerged unscathed. But life isn't a fairy tale, and sometimes the dragon isn't slain. It's just kept at bay, locked outside the castle walls where it can't hurt anyone anymore. Marcus and I are expecting our first child now, a daughter. We've already decided that Patricia will never meet her unless she demonstrates genuine change over years, not months. Therapy reports aren't enough. Words aren't enough. We need to see sustained, proven transformation before we'd even consider introducing our child to the woman who tried to poison her mother. Gerald cried when we told him. I understand, he said. I hate it, but I understand. I'll love her enough for both grandparents. I promise you that. And he will. Because family isn't just blood, it's the people who show up, who protect you, who choose love over control. Gerald chose love. Marcus chose love. Rachel chose love, standing by me when I needed her most. And me? I chose to switch those glasses. I chose to fight back. I chose myself, my marriage, and my future. and I'd make the same choice again, every single time. The champagne flutes from our wedding sit in our china cabinet now, cleaned and polished and empty. Sometimes people ask about them during dinner parties, and we tell an edited version of the story, just dramatic enough to be interesting, sanitized enough not to horrify. The real story lives in that manila folder in our safe deposit box, insurance against any future attempts to rewrite history. Because that's the thing about revenge I've learned. Sometimes it's not about dramatic confrontation or elaborate plots. Sometimes it's simply about refusing to be the victim, about turning the weapon back on its wielder, about surviving and thriving and building a life so good that their absence from it is their own punishment. Patricia wanted to destroy my wedding day. Instead, she destroyed her relationship with her son. She wanted to prove I wasn't good enough for her family. Instead, she proved she wasn't good enough for ours. Every time I sip champagne now, at celebrations, at dinners, at quiet moments with my husband, I remember that night. I remember the choice I made, the power I took back, the line I drew in the sand. And I smile because I know the truth that Patricia will never accept. I didn't just switch glasses, I switched the entire narrative. She thought she was writing my ending, but I took the pen from her hand and wrote my own beginning instead. And it's a beautiful story,